What's one of the number one hiring mistakes you see practices making out there?
I think realistically, it's hiring the wrong person. Not every person will be right for your practice. I think working with a recruiter is you want to find somebody who's going to take the time to ask you the questions, not just what the schedule is, what the package is, but what do you want from a colleague? What's your goals? Do you want somebody who's going to come in who wants to progress? Do you want somebody who wants to come in and just do a couple of days?
What's the difference between a practice that has good retention and one that churns team members?
I would say...
Welcome to the Veterinary Blueprint Podcast, brought to you by Butler Vet Insurance, hosted by Bill Butler. The Veterinary Blueprint Podcast is for veterinarians and practice managers who are looking to learn about working on their practice instead of in their practice. Each episode, we will bring you successful, proven blueprints from others both inside and outside the veterinary industry. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome to the Veterinary Blueprints Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Butler, and this podcast is all about bringing business and entrepreneurship ideas to veterinary practice owners and managers. Today, I'm joined by John Reed, the CEO and lead talent acquisition specialist at Supreme Search Specialists, a global veterinary recruitment firm connecting top-tier DVM talent with high-performing practices. He is a frequent speaker at veterinary conferences, both here in the United States and in Europe, and is a trusted advisor to practice owners scaling their teams both here in the United States and Europe. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we met at, you actually had me moderate a panel down at VMX, and we got connected there this year, 2025 down in Florida. And I just think you've got an awesome team of people. You had a booth down there at VMX, and you're bringing a unique thing to the veterinary community because you're taking a little bit different approach because you're obviously from the UK. Your company's based in the UK. So why don't you give our listeners a little bit about who John Reed is and who Supreme Search Specialists are?
Yeah, perfect. So yes, we're based in the UK, but we operate throughout Europe and throughout North America. And myself, I've been doing veterinary recruitment for kind of the past 10 years and a few years of working for what used to be the UK's largest veterinary recruiter. I decided to kind of go it on my own. And like you said, wanted to put a unique spin on it and actually start focusing on the people behind the job roles rather than kind of high volumes, placements, and kind of only care about filling vacancies and not actually with the right quality. So yeah, kind of entered the US market first, and we've been steadily growing. I think with our approach being different, being focused on people, a no pressure agency really.
Yeah, that was a unique thing. A couple of things that came up during our panel at VMX that we probably will get into, but you approach things from kind of a service first versus that trying to make money off recruiting model, which I think is quite prevalent out there, especially in the insurance industry. And so, I think, just to kind of dive right in with your 10 years of experience recruiting in the veterinary field, what's one of the number one hiring mistakes you see practices making out there?
I think realistically, it's hiring the wrong person. And it's something that I'm really a big advocate on, is that not every person will be right for your practice. And equally, your practice won't be right for every clinician or every kind of support staff. It is about finding the right fit, because then people will stay with you longer, will be true advocates of your clinic, really.
How big does culture play a role in that, do you feel?
I think massively. I think people get into veterinary medicine because they care, because they enjoy what they do. So having people around them that have the same vision as them, that the same kind of quality of care, the same beliefs is really, really important. You want to be working around people who want the same from, the care that they give throughout everyone, really, I suppose.
So it's not just a warm body. It's also finding somebody who's going to fit both clinically, but also culturally and with your team as well, right? Like, culture is based in cult, right? You're trying to build a team of people who are all trying to row the boat in the same direction. And so trying to find the right fit for that, I think, that's probably the $64,000 question that everyone's trying to answer, right?
Yeah, exactly that. The kind of old saying, one rotten apple can ruin the whole lot is definitely true, because having the wrong person in your clinic can affect everyone around you. But equally, if that person has a bad experience with your clinic, the reality is that they will tell other people. They will go maybe people who they've studied with, people who they see at the conferences or the events. People talk, and I'm sure everyone knows that bad news travels much further than good news, which is a sad story to tell, but it's a true.
So, when you and your team are working to find a placement, and, what's interesting about your firm is you don't work with just, small practices. You work with some large aggregators all the way down to solo practitioners trying to make their first hire. So you're really a full service recruiting firm specializing in the veterinary field, correct? So you see it all?
Yeah. We work with some of the largest corporates in the world, but we also work with the small independent who might have set up that clinic 6 months ago, 12 months ago. I've even helped somebody who I helped when I first got into vet med recruitment. I helped him find his position. I've equally helped staff his hospital here in the UK as well.
So you see, like I said, you see the large corporate scale recruitment, massive hiring, all the way down to a little bit more boutique side. And so, with that, what trends are you seeing in the associate vet expectations, and how are owners adapting to that?
Yeah, I think in the past, definitely the past kind of 5 years, recruitment, especially for DVMs, has changed massively. There has been some new players in the game, and it has changed benefit packages, kind of paid holiday, all of that kind of stuff. It's changed the kind of view. And what we're seeing is that the kind of smaller independent practices, they just need to be aware that things have changed. They need to be aware what's competitive, what other places are offering, so they can also bring their kind of packages in line with the kind of the national average, I would say, or what's expected from the doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're you're a one doc solo practitioner, you're looking to make your first associate hire, trying to know what the market is for benefit packages. Let's say you worked at Banfield 5 years ago, you started your practice, you're now ready to make your first hire for an associate, or 2 or 3 years ago. Just trying to understand what the benefit package is, what 401ks are, how much you're hiring someone out of school versus how much you're hiring someone with 5 years experience. Like, those are all different numbers, right?
Yeah, for sure. Packages can look very different, and they can look very different kind of state to state, different areas of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if you have never hired somebody before, then you definitely do need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help of what is the average now? Because, like you said, if you opened your practice 3 years ago and you were employed 3 years ago, well, the packages definitely look different today than they did 3 years ago.
Sure. And so, when you're working with a placement, and this is one of the things that I just thought I found very interesting from our panel discussion at VMX, was that a question came up during the panel. Somebody had asked, how do I know I'm working with the right recruitment firm? And you said, don't pay a retainer fee, like it's kind of like an upfront fee. Would you describe that a little bit, and working with a placement, how that process works, but then also some red flags if you're going to work with a recruiter versus just out on your own?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, the retained model is definitely very kind of old hat. It's been and gone, because if you get a retained fee, you're under pressure to fill that vacancy, and you're under pressure to fill it, like we said, with a warm body, not with somebody who matches your cultural fit, wants to stay with you, has the same kind of belief. You've been paid for part of it, so you're trying to fill it with anybody. And I think if a recruiter is asking for a retained fee, that would ring alarm bells for me, because I would think, am I going to get the right person? Does that stop me from getting a direct applicant who comes in tomorrow or next week, or from a referral from a friend? Is, well, you've already paid that retained fee, so do you take this person who's kind of come knocking on your door independently?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was a military recruiter so different recruiting, but I was a military recruiter for 3 years, and it was a quota. It was get warm bodies in the National Guard. This is right after 9/11. And so it was, hey, can this person join the military? Yep. Are they going to be successful? Not sure, but I need the number, so we're going to put them in. Not the worst recruiting stories or, stuff that you've heard, but there's definitely, when you have that quota, so to speak, you do feel the pressure to try and just get the warm body in the seat to fit the need and then move on to the next one. If it doesn't work out, you won't find out for 6, 9, 12 months down the road, maybe even longer, because that practice, if they've got the wrong person on the bus, they tend to have that wrong person hang around for quite a while because they don't want to deal with it. So it's easier to just let a bad apple hang around than try and get them out of the bunch. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I have seen that quite a few times. And what all of our recruiters do is we're taught to follow up with people. So if we place somebody with somebody, I want the recruitment team to follow up. How's things going? Is it what you expected? Is it the right clinic for you? Because if that person comes in, and I've had to tell this to clinics constantly, is that one person who has a bad experience, who might not have been good for your practice, will tell everyone they graduated with and everybody that they meet after you. It's almost, if you hire the wrong person, don't be scared to have them leave, because you don't want to affect your current team and your future team as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, behind you, it says the friendly recruiter. And I found that to be an interesting tagline when we were hanging out at the booth down at VMX. What does that mean to you and your team when you say the friendly recruiter?
Well, the friendly recruiter, it came from, I'd approached a client who I'd never met before and I'd never worked with, and they called me the friendly recruiter. And it was a passing comment at the time. And then I went to VMX a couple of years ago, and somebody else called me the friendly recruiter. And I asked them, I said, what does that mean? I've been called that a couple of times. And they said, everybody calls you the friendly recruiter because we'll see you chatting to everyone, being nice to people. We've even seen you have coffee with some of your competitors, and we find you really approachable. And they'd asked me why. And I said, competition in this industry, good competition is good. What you want to worry about is if I'm not talking to somebody, or I'm not seeing somebody. Friendly for me is just treating people as people. And I think sometimes work-wise, you get a bit lost in that, and you don't realize that the reception staff, the techs, the DVMs, the hospital managers, they're all people. And how would you treat that person outside of work? Well, you'd be nice to them. You'd be polite. You'd be courteous. And I think if you adapt that in work, it'll portray in the work that you do.
I completely agree with that. So, in the recruiting world, right, I'm going to go out and take out an ad in Indeed, or put a job post up on different job posting boards, or advertise it on LinkedIn, or the State Veterinary Association, to try and find a candidate. For practices out there who've never worked with a recruiter before, what does working with a recruiter look like, and what does a placement look like working with Supreme Specialists, and your kind of experience with that?
I think working with a recruiter is you want to find somebody who's going to take the time to ask you the questions, not just what the schedule is, what the package is, but what do you want from a colleague? What's your goals? Do you want somebody who's going to come in who wants to progress? Do you want somebody who wants to come in and just do a couple of days? Is actually somebody who spends the time to find out what you are looking for. And when they bring a candidate to you, they can equally tell you what that candidate is looking for. And you can tell that they've actually spoken to them and this person values their work-life balance, or this person values the salary that you're going to offer. It's somebody who takes that extra time to realize what you're looking for and equally what the candidate is looking for as well.
Sure. And so where do you find, obviously practices will reach out to you and say, hey, help us hire. How do you find your pool of candidates to, say, hey, here, I've got 3 possibilities. Where do the associates find you, or how do you find associates?
So we are very unique how you won't see our job postings on any of the job boards, because we post on our internal website, but we go to a lot of the events like VMX. We're attending AVMA, Western, all of the big events. We go and meet not only candidates who we've helped find jobs, but clients that we've worked with, new potential candidates. We do a lot of networking, but a lot of our basis is on referral. If we find you a really good place, somewhere that fits with you, how likely are you going to recommend that somebody uses us to help them? I had somebody who I'd placed maybe 4 years ago who called me to say they were relocating and said to me, look, you found me this perfect job 4 years ago. Can you help me? I'm relocating.
Find me a new one.
This area.
Yeah, find me a new one, right?
Exactly. And I think the biggest compliment I had, which was actually the beginning of this year, is I'd placed somebody in a position and she reached back out to me to say, my husband's now looking. Will you be able to help him? And I think that's a massive compliment, that you will trust your most loved person to me to help, because you trusted that person and got what you wanted and what you expected, I think.
So, for you and the model, it's matching the right associate or the right DVM with the right practice. From a business model, am I paying you a fee for that? Is it so much down and then so much after a couple months? I mean, and I don't need the numbers, but from a recruiting model, I mean, that you talked about a retained fee. What's the difference between a retained fee and your model?
Yeah, so our model is you only pay if you hire somebody. So we'll send you resumes, you'll arrange interviews, you'll meet with them, and you'll have all of that. And you'll only pay a fee if both you and the candidate agree to employ people. And equally, we offer kind of rebates, so refunds if it doesn't work out, because we don't want people just to kind of keep them there. We offer extended rebate periods. So if it gets 2-3 weeks in and you realize, actually, guys, this wasn't the match for us, then you've got that. You haven't paid a massive fee for that. You will get some of that back and you'll be able to start the hiring process for the right person again.
Usually, in the first 30 days if somebody's the right fit for your practice or business or not. And if you get past 30 days and you're not sure, you probably should really sit down and spend some time thinking about, do I really want this person here more than 30 days?
Yeah. And I think this is something in VetMed that was kind of not apparent for quite a few years, but we're real big advocates of having somebody come in and spend a few hours with your team, because somebody can interview great. And I found it myself in my business, is that people can interview really, really well, but when you get them kind of sat in the seat in the office, it's not the same person who interviewed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that or...
Yeah, you're like, wait a second, this wasn't who we talked to. This was the person I spoke with on the phone. This wasn't the person sitting in my office. And I think we talked about that. We spent some time talking about that during our panel about job shadowing, team interviews, having different genders interview. So if you're hiring a man, have a woman do part of the interview and vice versa, because they're going to hear and see and interpret things in a different way. And so trying to get a mix of all of that into place to get an aggregate versus just, Bill, practice owner, I'm making the decisions, right?
Yeah. And I think you want them to meet as many people, because the more people that they meet, the more interactions they have, the more you find out if they will fit with your clinic, really.
That's that culture piece we were chatting about earlier.
Yeah,
How do they fit with
exactly
the
that.
overall culture?
I heard it.
Yeah.
I heard at one of the events that I attended is sit them with the reception staff, because how somebody talks to the reception staff will show you what kind of person they are. And I really liked that, because I thought that's when they think they're not being watched.
And, some of the reception staff and some of the practices we work with, there's some of the longest tenured employees there that it's not the 5-year vet tech, it's the 15-year receptionist who's been a receptionist since the practice opened. That's the person you kind of want giving you the temperature test of the new candidate.
Yeah. And I think that gets overlooked quite a lot, because them reception staff, hospital kind of support staff, they're massive. They usually are the people who know your business inside out. They know where everything is. They know who looks after what part. They're essentially, they're kind of the hidden gems within the practices. They know your business really well, and they'll equally know what you're looking for, because they would have seen people come and go.
Yeah. Well, if you've got 3 associates, they might only be seeing a 30, or, if you've got 3 associates and 1,000 clients or 1,000 patients, they might only see a third of those patients, but the reception staff are seeing all of the clients come through. And like you said, they see the broader picture. Let's chat about the state of the market a little bit. I think there's a lot of talk out there about the current marketplace, veterinary shortages. Is it more complicated than just saying there's a shortage of veterinarians out there?
I would say so, because what I've seen in my time in vet med is that we're getting a shortage for a couple of different reasons. And I've seen a big push kind of post-COVID that people have left the industry and kind of are going into non-clinical roles. And that has caused a massive skill gap. And from my point of view, and what I've been trying to work with, is why are these people leaving to go to non-clinical, and trying to work with retaining some of them in the industry, because they're the people who have been practicing for maybe 5, 15, 20 years, who have got the good skills, but why are they leaving? And can we kind of keep them to stabilize the skill shortage?
And so, with that, trying to find candidates, because for whatever reason, it's more complicated than just saying we don't have enough veterinarians. What are veterinary practices overlooking in their hiring practices? And maybe, as we chatted about earlier, specifically benefit packages to try and attract associates to their practice?
I think that there's a big part of clinics that are offering a lot of kind of ongoing relief staff. And from my kind of perspective, what I'm spotting is them relief staff, they even work for clinics for quite a long time. But what I think people are missing is, if they can offer kind of a 2-day week, or even kind of 1-day week to a temporary relief staff, why can they not offer it to somebody permanent who's going to kind of be invested in your business, who's going to stay there and kind of be a constant throughout? And I think that is something that the practices are missing, is if you can offer it to a relief member of staff, why can't you offer it to a permanent member of staff?
Sure. So some of that flexibility, I know, at Butler Vet Insurance, one of the things we're a small, independently owned business, and I'm competing with some very large, national corporate insurance groups out there. One thing I can do is give PTO versus what some of the large they're not going to give as much as I give. And one of my team members says the first thing he says every time he has a recruiter reach out to him on LinkedIn, he says, "What's my PTO package look like? Do I get X number of days?" And invariably they say, "Well, no, we don't give that many days off." And he's like, "Well, lose my number, because Bill's giving me something that no one else can give me, and I want to stay here because of that." So finding those ways to build loyalty, it doesn't always have to be about money. it's flexible schedules. Maybe it's a specific benefit package. Maybe it's saying, all right, well, we're going to have a set of staff that work. We're going to have clinic hours till 8 p.m. because we're going to have some clinic staff, and that actually accommodates more. And I'm seeing a little bit more of that with some of the practices I work with.
Yeah, massively. Like I said, 10 years ago, when I first came into the industry, I wasn't seeing this flexibility. Everybody had to do kind of on call. Everybody had to do 5 days a week. It was kind of very strict. And I'm really glad to see that the world has changed, and so has people scheduling. I'm seeing a lot of 4-day weeks. I'm seeing people not having to do them out of hours and giving a little bit more flexibility, which is creating less burnout for the clinicians, and equally less people leaving if you are being flexible.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of the Veterinary Blueprint Podcast is sponsored by Butler Vet Insurance. Being an insurance agent at Butler Vet Insurance, I've seen firsthand the difficulties veterinarians face insuring their practices. But did you know that we wrote the book on veterinary insurance? It's called Protecting Your Veterinary Practice: Insider Insurance Secrets Every Veterinarian Must Know. It's not just a book, it's a comprehensive guide that speaks to the unique challenges and insurance solutions for the veterinary community. With over 20 years experience from cyber liability to business auto and workers' compensation, our aim at Butler Vet Insurance is to reduce the stress of insurance for those dedicated to animal care. If you're a veterinary practice owner or manager and looking for some guidance on your insurance, follow our insurance blueprint. Discover the Butler Vet Insurance difference. And together, let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. Butler Vet Insurance, reducing the stress of insurance. Yeah. Well, talking about shifts, what are you seeing generationally and geographically shifting within the vet space, veterinary space? What should practice owners pay attention to?
I'm seeing a lot more 3-4 day weeks, and even clinicians who are wanting to do kind of extended hours, but during them kind of 3 days or 4 days, because people are prioritizing their life. I think very much people have been focused about health and about well-being, and not wanting to kind of work 5 days a week every day and just having a couple of days off there. They're wanting to travel. They're wanting to see different parts of the world. They're wanting to spend more time with their families. I'm seeing that the younger generation, that's what they like. They want to almost, have that time, that free time. But they are still willing to work for it. So, like I said, they are happy to do more hours per day as long as they get more days off, really.
What I've found personally is just asking what's important to them and not thinking that everyone's going to fit in the same box. And, because might have one person that say, I want a stable 5-day schedule. I want a salary. I don't want it based on production. I want to know if I show up and work 40 hours a week or how, whatever your basis is, I'm going to make X. And you're going to have somebody else say, I want to work a flexible schedule, put me on production. I'm going to sell the heck out of, vaccines. I'm really good at that. I can earn more with less time if you give me the time off. And I think it's important to meet people where they are. And then you can get, those really good people. Because if you've got a high production person, but they're only working 3 days a week, that's not terrible, right?
Yeah. And that is part of our qualifying. When we speak to people, we say, what's the most important thing to you? And that's a really important question, because some people might say, the most important thing to me is I can drop my daughter off at school. Or somebody might say, the most important thing to me is I want to earn as much as I can within a certain period. And equally, it goes back to not everybody will fit your practice, and not every colleague will kind of fit with your culture, because if your brand is about work-life balance and supporting people, well, somebody who wants to come in and will work all the hours that it can and wants to earn as much, they might not fit well with that place, but they might fit well with somewhere that is more high production, and equally the other way around.
Sure.
Somebody who's looking for a better work-life balance is not going to fit in somewhere which is high production. Money doesn't make everything okay, which I think some people think, yeah, if we've got a problem, let's throw a bit more money at it. But actually, let's look at what that person wants.
So, talking about the retention piece, then how can, shifting to a leadership and retention component for veterinary practice, how can leaders think beyond hiring and retain team members long-term? Because, you invest a lot to bring somebody on board. How do you invest and then retain them?
I think feedback and open communication, because you might have somebody in the practice that you think is really happy, but how often do you actually just ask them, how's your week? How's things going? Ask a little bit about their personal life. It's sometimes in the age that we live in, a lot of things is computerized, which has helped a massive amount, but it shouldn't take away that personal sit down and ask somebody, how's your week? How are you finding things at the moment? That little bit of chatting to people. And if there is an issue with somebody, don't let it sit there. If somebody has an issue and you can solve that issue, then solve it, which sounds very simple, but often is very much overlooked.
Yeah, there's a famous Theodore Roosevelt quote, and it's nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's just showing interest and caring for your team a little bit versus just like, I know everything. This is how we run the practice.
Yeah. Because so, again,
John,
we work so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably the wrap up question from a recruiting perspective. Obviously, finding talent is a huge thing. Retaining talent's probably equally, if not more important, because you invest so much to get them. Give me two things. One thing that you would give that solo practitioner out there looking to make their first hire. What's the one piece of advice you would give them on looking and hiring their first associate?
Is make sure it's the right person. Take the extra time to meet them, to understand what they want. Ask them, I can't stress this enough, ask them what is the most important thing. And if that most important thing is something you can offer and fits well with you, you're on good grounds really. But making sure that hire is the right hire, not just the quickest hire.
Yeah. Sometimes just filling the need actually sets you backwards versus pushing you forwards.
Yeah.
So that's the hire side. I think I know the answer on the retention side, but what's the difference between a practice that has good retention and one that churns team members?
I would say the communication, asking people and adapting. Sometimes you do need to adapt. If you've got somebody there who is a kind of a golden nugget, you want to keep them as long as possible. And you want them people who show loyalty to be rewarded. So if you have got somebody in the practice
Absolutely.
And you can adapt to keep them, do it.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for the time today. I know that this is a huge conversation piece that you can probably talk for 4 or 5 hours on. I know that when we got done with our panel discussion at VMX, there was a line of like 7 or 8 veterinarians, a couple association people, some large aggregators. There was an Animal Humane Society, I think out in Colorado, or some kind of shelter who's asking for help. So I know that this is just a huge topic and issue out there in the animal health industry. And, it's great that there are people like you and your team out there looking to help the veterinarians fill that need. How do people find Supreme Search Specialists and contact you and your team if they're looking for some help with recruiting?
Yeah, so I would say the main place is LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, which our LinkedIn page is just Supreme Search Specialists Ltd. And you can also visit our website, which is supremesearchspecialist.com. It has links and contact details for myself, for other members of the team. We're equally kind of an inquiries page. You can see our job listings on there as well. yeah, just contact myself or my brother-in-law, Nick. He kind of does a lot with the US veterinary market. So he's also a very good contact to have.
Yeah, I was impressed with you overall, your team, your caring, and I know that you're passionate about helping veterinarians staff their practices with good people, and you're open to those conversations, or just that, like I said, that one tip or one piece of advice. So, if you're out there looking for help hiring and retaining veterinarians at your practice, there's a lot of resources out there, and John and his team at Supreme Search Specialists are one of those resources. Well, thanks for joining us again, John, and really appreciated the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. As always, remember to like, share, and review the podcast with your friends out there in the veterinary community. It helps spread the message of business entrepreneurship out there in the veterinary community. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints Podcast.